Welcome to the Rewilded Human podcast, where Dr. Lucille and Lynn will tackle your most difficult and intimate questions with candor, tough love, and a little dash of humor. In today's episode,
sometimes I think about the difference between discipline and corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Okay, spanking. I have too many clients whose traumatic wounds have to do with being spanked or publicly physically abused.
Yeah.
You know, to the parents, it was just like normal, but they don't realize that it's not just the spanking, but the shame of that kind of, I'll call it what it is. It's abuse.
I've known people like that, not personally, but through friends and stuff, like where the husband wanted it like 4 or 5 times a day, and he was out cheating on her with like 30 other women. So a lot of times when this is happening, it's a sexual addiction. The guy has a problem. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 36. Guys, I've been so excited about this episode because normally we're answering your questions, but this time we're going back and we're doing some retro Dear Abby stuff from the last century, and we're going to be answering some questions, and we're going to see how times have changed since the last century. And I'm going to introduce you guys to my beautiful and so smart co-host, Dr. Lucille. And if you guys are ready, we are ready. So Dr. Lucille, take it away.
All right. Here's the first question from 1960. I am in love with 2 boys and don't know which one to marry. First, there's Andy. He's sort of blonde and sells insurance. Mama likes him, which helps a lot. He's very reliable and seems anxious to get married. Then there's Tony. He's dark and sort of gives me the creeps, but they're awfully nice creeps, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
I don't know which one I like best. In the daytime, I like Andy, but I believe I like Tony better at night. Which one do you think would make the best, husband for me? Andy or Tony?
Oh, what a dilemma, huh? Do we take the blonde or the dark-haired boy? Well, Mama likes him a lot when we're talking about Andy, so that's a big selling point. Guys, just to tell you a little bit about the format, what we're going to do is Dr. Lucille and I will address the questions and how we would answer it, and then we're going to tell you how Abby actually responded. So bear with us first. We're gonna jump in and see what we come up with, and then let's see what the actual response was. So you need to stick around for that. So Dr. Lucille, what do you think? Who should she choose? That's a tough decision, isn't it?
Well, it's especially tough because she really doesn't have a lot of information.
No, she really doesn't.
Superficial. So, one guy's the nice, reliable guy, and the other guy is the hot one, and I'm sorry, but successful marriages are based on more than that. You have to really look at things a little more deeply, but I understand that this is probably a very young woman who
Yes.
doesn't have a lot of experience with men or dating.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like in la la land about it. And, I would say that she really needs to have a little bit more life experience and really understand the nuances and complexities of relationships before she dives in to make a big life decision like marriage.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you think back in those days, like in the 1960s, do you think things were more superficial? I mean, people got married a lot younger. At 18,
Yeah.
20, it was very common to get married, so you didn't have as much time to date and to shop around as you do today. So do you think
Well, you didn't realize you had to date and shop around?
Yeah.
I think that there was a lot of naivete in that era. We are not taught even now. Really, we're not really prepared for how to pick a mate. We really aren't. Although there's so much more information out there about, psychological processes and all sorts of how to pick your mate and, and all sorts of things. Self-help. I mean, the self-help that we have now is like immense compared to what it was in the 1960s,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So, so it is a very different kettle of fish that we're living with now than they did then. And yet, I'm, and I have not looked up the divorce statistics, but I don't know if they divorced, people who married in the 60s divorced at a higher rate than we did. I don't think they
I don't
did.
think so. I don't think so. I think
Then
people
again,
stuck it out. Yeah.
yeah, they stuck it out. And I think that, partly, that's fine. It's just that, how did they stick it out?
Yeah.
Is it, like, okay, well, we've been married for so long, I'm not going
Yeah.
to rock the boat, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one
I
way
mean,
to look at it, or that people didn't give up so easily because now divorce is so accessible, it's so easy, you're not being judged. So, you don't really even have to try to put in the effort because it's really easy to walk away. So there's two sides to that. But I think people
yeah,
also ended up like marrying kind of their first boyfriend. Women would just marry their first boyfriend, right? First, or maybe the second one, and that was it.
yeah. And they didn't realize that there was a whole lot of growth that was going to happen from the time they married until, they had children and all that other stuff that happened. People
Yeah,
change.
they do.
So
They
anyway, what would your answer be, Lynn?
I would say the same thing, that she's just too young to make a decision, because at this point, if you're only looking at the superficial things, like, he's creepy, but in a nice way, I mean, that already gives me the creeps. I like one during the day and one during the night. I think this lady was just too young. I would love to see which one she chose, and what happened years. I mean, we're how many
Yes,
years?
yes.
60
Yeah.
years later, what happened? Is she with Tony or Andy? But let's look at what Abby said. Dear Andy or Tony, don't marry either one if it's a toss-up. Don't marry either one if it's a toss-up. Date others and make comparisons. When the one comes along, you'll flip your lid, not a coin.
It's so cool.
It's very
I
cool,
just
right?
love her. I miss dear Abby. She just knew how to turn a phrase. She's
No,
great.
it's true. She's
So,
really good. I grew up with
yeah,
her as well, and I was always looking forward to her column, but just, right to the point, right?
right to the point.
Basically what
Yeah.
we said, but she just said it much more eloquently in one sentence.
Much
But
more, and yeah, and with a sense of humor, very witty. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's go on to the next. Dear Abby, if you read the papers as well as write for them, you saw the article about the judge who gave a husband permission to spank his wife when she needed it. All I can say is it's about time. We can tell this is from a male, right? This is written by a male. Yes. I was, and he goes on to say, I was beginning to think that women were taking over the country. If more men turned their wives over their knees and showed them who was boss, society would be in better shape. Spanking should be legalized everywhere. And in bold type, one man's opinion.
Oh boy, where do we start?
Well, this is definitely not where we're at now in this world, are we? Thank God.
No.
Although I'm sure in some societies it's still happening, but
Yeah, it's
this
still
is
happening,
one
but
thing
not this openly.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. To make it like sanctioned but in law, nah, this would never happen here. But I think there's not much discussion we need about this one.
Not much
It's
to
kind of
say.
like, yeah,
I guess just how far we've come from this. That, that this was okay like 50, 60 years ago for a man to even ask this, or to even propose this, that spanking should be legalized everywhere. But the shocking part is going to come now, guys, because the shocking part is not really the question, which, I mean, there's not much we can add to this. Obviously, this is insane and crazy, and we can't get behind this. But let's look at what Abby says. This is going to blow your mind, guys. Dear man, there are at least two things wrong with legalizing wife spanking. Number one, when does a spanking end and the beating begin? Number two, who is the final authority on when a wife is in need of spanking? When she repeatedly puts starch on his collars or pastes his mother in the face of a coconut cake. Sorry, but spankings are for children.
wow. And even now they're not for children. That could be, that could get you investigated by Children's Aid Society.
Yeah.
Actually. Right. Yeah. So good for her for putting him in his place, again, with wit. She always does it with great wit. I love that.
She does. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I am so glad. I have some nostalgia for the 60s, but not for this shit.
Not for
I'm
the
sorry.
spanking.
No, not for
Did
this.
Did you get spanked, Lucille?
No, I think every once in a while, when my mother was really frustrated with me for something that had to do more with her, not me, she might hit me. Yeah, but it was rare. It was very rare. Did you get spanked?
Well, it wasn't really spanking, we'd get slapped. It was like, I'm European, I grew up in Hungary. This was like kind of part of the culture. And I think still to this day, it happens a lot more in Europe than in North America, for example. I don't know. I mean, there's different, points of view for this as well. Like my grandfather always used to say, and, he had 3 daughters, and he'd always say that a timely smack is worth like 1,000 words of or punishment or anything else. Like, like you put them in their place immediately, and then they know they did something wrong. And then people will say that kids today, the reason there's so many problems with society and with children, they're growing up, is because they're not being disciplined enough. What do you think of that?
Well, but we have to sometimes, I think about the difference between discipline and corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Okay, spanking, because, I have too many clients whose traumatic wounds have to do with being spanked or publicly physically abused. So, to the parents, it was just like normal, but they don't realize that it's not just the spanking, but the shame of that kind of, I'll call it what it is. It's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are always ways to discipline a child without having to punish them physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just think that's the easy way out. Unfortunately, it was considered normal way, way, way too long.
Yeah.
And by people who had no understanding of the psychological complexities of the human being, and how a spanking can, be a wound that a child carries way up until their adulthood.
And
right?
where does the spanking stop and the abuse begin? Like, it's like it's different. A quick smack on the butt compared to like truly abusing the child. Like where do you draw the line, or where does it stop?
Yes, well, I think it's very clear that you can use your voice.
Mm-hmm.
You can always use your voice. You just need to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
How to do it. And so even if you raise your voice, I mean, I don't think raising your voice is a bad thing to do with a child. But the other thing is to be very firm and very consistent in your messaging. Okay, it can't be that you've let Johnny run out into the street 3 times, and then on the 4th time you smack him across the face. This is like crazy, and a lot of people are like this, unfortunately, or were like this. It's about, Johnny is told what's wrong, told not to do, and told what the consequences, and then you consequence them when they do it.
No, I agree completely. My son was like this. Like, I would tell him, Dante, please put on your shoes. Can you please put on your shoes? Honey, go put on your shoes, please. Please put on your shoes. We got to go. And then put your freaking shoes on. And then he'd go do it. But until then, like, he wouldn't even hear me. He was just like in one ear, out the next. And I mean, I hated that part of having to yell to get his attention. But ultimately, that was the only way to do it, which is kind of crazy. But, some kids are like that. And some dogs are like that. You have to be kind of more disciplined with them and tougher with them, because otherwise they just don't listen to you. But definitely not okay. And definitely, I'm really glad how far we've come from this.
Yes, absolutely.
And, wife beating and all of this other stuff. I just had a post recently on Instagram. I don't know if you saw that, about all the things that were just legalized recently when it comes to women. And one was just recently that you cannot rape your wife. That became illegal just like in recent times. I mean, how insane is that until then it was okay. It's your wife, so you can rape her whenever you want. Like how?
Yes.
And in some cultures, it's still legal.
And that's exactly right. It's still legal. And in fact, it's just part of the norm. It's just the norm. Culture. Yeah. Yes. So
that's another episode, guys. So Okay. Next question, Dr. Lucy.
Oh, yeah, this is a funny one. Dear Abby, my husband has always been very close to his mother, and she has never cared much for me. I asked my husband if I was drowning and his mother was drowning, which one would he save? He said, my mother, because I owe her more. I'm so terribly hurt, Abby. What shall I do? Arlene.
Oh, poor Arlene. I mean, even if the guy thinks that, he shouldn't tell her.
Well, maybe he told her for a reason. Like maybe it was to get her off his back. I don't know why I told, but maybe he was just being very truthful and honest. Maybe she was trying to, very insecure and trying to
Yeah.
keep getting him to tell her that, no, you're the most important woman in my life. No, 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 no. But, he told the truth. Like,
Yeah.
give the guy a little bit of credit. I don't agree that I find him a great marriage prospect. Unfortunately, a lot of guys are like that.
Really?
Yeah, there are quite a few out there who
Hmm.
will not say boo to their mother. If mom and their wife get into a spat, they're not going to stand up for their wife. They're just not.
Yeah, and I think you really need to, definitely. And
Yeah.
I'm questioning why Arlene would even ask this of the husband. So obviously she's very insecure, and he's a
Very
mama's boy,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah, and mom doesn't. The mother-in-law doesn't like her. Yeah, mother-in-law doesn't like her.
Yeah.
So, Arlene is living in constant state of insecurity. She's number two, or maybe number two. She's certainly not number one. I don't know.
Do you think the wife should always be number one in a husband's wife?
Yes, I think that the best marriages are ones where the couple are really a team and they prioritize their relationship above their relationships with anybody else. Doesn't mean that your parents are still not important.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, your parents did their job. Now you are out in the world and you have to create a life and you have to create a good family. And it shouldn't be about conflicts of loyalty. It should just be understood that, husband and wife are the top priority for one another. Those are the best marriages because those are the marriages in which both parties feel secure in their relationship. They know they're number one, and no matter how much they argue, they still know they are number one, and they're making very, very important decisions for their future, and so they better be a good team. They better be a good team.
What about the children?
Well, the children obviously, but the adults have to be a really good team to take the best care of their kids. Right?
That is true. That is true.
So, and I'm sorry, mothers-in-law, fathers-in-law, whatever, they're not the parents of the grandchildren. And it's the respect to the value system and priorities that's really important in setting where everybody's clear. What are the priorities?
Yeah.
What's the value system?
Yeah.
And in a couple, one of the highest values is not only their own relationship and how stable that is, but how important it is for them to be stable so they can raise their kids in the best possible manner.
That is
right?
true. That is very true. But having said that, I hope my son would save me.
I know in Newland, you'd be out there saving the
I'd be saving everyone else.
Saving everybody.
Let's see what Abby says. Dear Arlene, learn to swim.
That's so cool.
I mean, what else can you do, right? That's great advice.
You chose the guy. You're now stuck with it. Okay.
That would be a tough situation. I would hate that situation where I would feel like I'd have to be competing with my mother-in-law. My husband loves her more, or values her company or her opinion more than mine. That would be horrible. So I totally understand that. That was a really good question. I like that one.
Okay. So, we're into 1970 now.
Okay.
Dear Abby, I don't know when the smell of a man who has done an honest day's work went out of style. But I am from the old school, and I have no intentions of changing. I put in a good day's work, and naturally I perspire. But that doesn't bother me. I shower every morning, and I know I'm clean. At Christmas time, I got some perfumed this and perfumed that, and a fancy kit with all kinds of deodorants from some people I work with. If that was supposed to be a hint, it didn't work. In Europe, real he-men don't use perfume and deodorants. They smell like men. Do me a favor and back me up. I say men should smell like men, not like a flower garden. And so he signs it off in capitals, all men.
He puts all men. Well, first of all, he showers in the morning. So can you imagine he smell all night, how he smells all night?
Oh, yes. I can only empathize with whoever is around him.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for his wife. And
well, he doesn't even mention a wife. Like,
he doesn't,
so we don't
that's
know.
true. Maybe he doesn't have a wife.
What opinion he has, we have no idea. So maybe he can't get a wife.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't bother him, right? Obviously, it's bothering the people around him. And such a touchy issue. I mean, such a hard one to bring up and to tell someone. And I had this issue when I was working at Canada Trust in Toronto. And I was a branch administrator at this real estate company. And there was this girl that was working there at the reception, and she had very bad BO. And I had to tell her, and it was just such a difficult situation. And to put someone on this, and obviously she didn't know, she had no idea.
No idea. Yeah.
No, and I really hurt her, and I felt so bad. But you know, this was put on me by the management to talk to her, and it was like really heartbreaking. But I mean, this guy knows. I mean, it's not bothering him, but obviously he understands that he smells like a man, whatever that is, and men shouldn't smell like a flower garden. I find that hilarious. He is right about Europe. It's we've come a long way, but it used to be like that. Like I was shocked when I would go back from Canada, you know, like back in the 80s or early 90s, and you know, you'd be on the streetcar or on the bus, and everyone with their arms up, and you know, and it was just so bad. It was so bad, and people really didn't wear deodorants back then, which is obviously much healthier, right? Because we know most deodorants are very highly toxic and lead to breast cancer and all kinds of different issues. There are some good natural deodorants out there, but I mean, you know, in society today, there's really no excuse for smelling like a wild pig or something, right?
I agree. You have to have some sensitivity to what you're inflicting on other people. You really
definitely.
do.
And I mean, his excuse is that, you know, he's a man and bring back men smelling like men, and this is cool, this is normal. I don't think it's normal that we're putting all these perfumes and chemicals and all kinds of stuff on our body. I don't think that's normal.
That I agree with. Yeah.
I'm very allergic to perfume and cologne and aftershave and all that stuff. I hate it. It's highly toxic. It's bad for everybody. So that's not the excuse to use that kind of stuff. But I think, and also like when you're trying to cover up garlic breath with gum, you know, it doesn't work. So when you have really bad body odor and then you're trying to put some cologne on, it does not work. It makes it much worse because the two mix together, and it's just, I think it's worse than just the body odor in itself, right? It's terrible.
This is why I never want to be like my dog, because I imagine every once in a while what my dog smells like. They smell like 100 times more than what we can smell. I think it's at least 100 times.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I had a smell sense like my dog, I would die after 10 minutes. I really would.
I guess what's lucky with dogs, they like the smelly stuff, you know, like the poops and the butts. They love it. The smellier, the better. I have a very, very acute sense of smell, which is really, it's not a blessing at all. And I can smell things from miles away. Like if I smell someone, I can smell what they had for dinner the night before, or, you know, someone crossing the street, and I can smell they have their period, and it's really not a good thing. So I can totally relate to that. So for me to be around someone like this guy, that would be really, really hard for me. I'm very, very sensitive to smells. Not like the dogs, but you know, close. Let's see what Abby had to say. Dear all, I think I've heard from some of your co-workers, a real he-man didn't smell like a flower garden. Neither should he smell like a mountain goat.
Good for you, Abby.
That's very accurate. I like that. That was a
Yeah.
really good answer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah. So we move on. This is from 1985. Dear Abby, I am 46 years old and my husband is 44. We have been married 2 years. His third, my second. Okay, I got it. My problem is that this man is insatiable in the bedroom. He's been this way ever since we married. He wants sex at least 3 times a day.
What's the problem? I don't understand. Well, maybe we'll get to the problem. Let's see.
On weekends, we spend the whole day in bed. I thought he would eventually slow down, but his sex drive is as strong as ever. He's a model husband in every other way, but I'm exhausted from all this lovemaking. I feel like a prostitute who has to deliver on demand, only I'm not getting paid for it. Once a day would be plenty for me, but he insists it's not enough for him. I want to be a good wife, and I'm afraid if I deny him, he will go elsewhere to satisfy himself. What can I do? I don't want to lose him. Signed, Exhausted in Palo Alto. Poor Exhausted.
Poor Exhausted. I wonder how she's doing now. Since
Yeah.
85.
Yeah, or she may have died by now.
Yeah, I think so. Died of exhaustion.
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
man.
Lynn, so what do you think? What
Well,
do you think?
she's 46 and the husband's 44. So well done for you guys. I mean, you know, in one
I
sense.
mean, on one hand, yeah, it's wonderful to be vitally sexual at that
Yeah.
age. Absolutely.
But I think there has to be a middle ground that everyone's comfortable with. So I mean,
Yeah.
3 times a day is a bit extreme.
Exactly.
And I've known people like that, not personally, but you know, through friends and stuff, like where the husband wanted it like 4 or 5 times a day, and he was out cheating on her with like 30 other women. So a lot of times when this is happening, it's a sexual addiction. The guy has a problem.
Yeah, and it's true. And I empathize a lot with the wife because 3 times a day, it's likely not pleasurable sex for her because
Yeah.
it's the blam bam, thank you, ma'am kind of sex,
Yeah, yeah.
which really is not satisfying for women.
Yeah.
Like, to be vulgar, I mean, men can, get pleasure from, popping off after 2 minutes. What does that do for a woman?
I love it when
Nothing.
you're vulgar.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
I mean, if they spent the whole day in bed and he was giving her 30 cervical orgasms, she would not be writing to Dear Abby. I can tell you that,
It's true.
But this, 3, 4 times, this really is more about the guy needing to, get satisfied rather than really thinking about pleasurable lovemaking with his wife.
Yeah.
And he's obviously not thinking about what she needs. But then again, she's probably not even aware of what she needs, what she really needs in lovemaking, and how to express it. Because, a lot of us women, we're like, she was taught, well, she has to be the good wife and just go along.
Yeah.
And also most women never even explore their own sexuality to know what they really want and desire, even if they've been married before.
Yeah. And we're going to address this in an upcoming episode. So guys,
next episode, guys. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that one. Yeah. About
But the best, yeah, the solo sex experience is really important.
Yeah.
She would not be so exhausted if the sex was really deeply satisfying for her. In fact, it should be so satisfying that it infuses you with energy. It doesn't exhaust you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she needs to speak. She would need to have spoken to her husband and find a resolution.
Exactly.
This can't go on for, and the weekends also, you don't want the weekends just to be in bed making love. I mean, okay, when you're 18, you might do that, but not when you're 44 and 46. Then, you need to go out there and live your life and do other things. And there's a whole world out there outside of sex. Well, let's see what Abby had to say. Dear Exhausted, look at the facts. Your husband's sexual appetite far exceeds yours, but you continue to deliver on demand like an unpaid prostitute for fear you'll lose him. Meanwhile, you're exhausted. My dear lady, You must tell your model husband exactly how you feel. If you lack the courage, see a counselor who will surely call your husband in, since he is part of the problem. You need to be assured that your feelings are every bit as important as his, and he needs to know it too. If you married for love, perhaps you have the wrong man. And if you married for sex, perhaps he has the wrong woman. Interesting.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
that was a really good
Yeah.
one.
He's very, very wise, I
Yeah,
think. Very
very
wise.
wise. But these were
Yeah.
some good questions. I mean, this was fun. You know,
Yeah.
I had
This
fun
is
trying
great.
to choose some really good ones that hopefully our audience will resonate with.
And we didn't disagree with her, did we?
No,
We
no,
did.
I think no,
No,
we
we
didn't
did
disagree
really
with her.
well. We
Yeah,
were aligned with Abby.
yeah, absolutely.
This rounds out my life experience with dear Abby. I can
Yeah.
come back to her, full circle years and years later and say, I'm with you, Abby. I understand exactly what you say and why you're saying it.
How cool is that? How cool
Yeah.
is that? Well, guys, that brings us to the end of episode 36. Thank you so much for watching or listening if you're listening to this as a podcast. And guys, keep sending us your questions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and we appreciate your support. And in the next episode, guys, we're going to talk to a few people of Melanie, Louise, about dissatisfactions with friendships and shock within the marriage. So we're going to have some really interesting questions in the next episode. You guys want to tune in for that one. Thank you, guys. All the best.
Thank you, everybody. See you in the next episode.
See you next one. Bye.
Please be aware that Lynn and I are here to provide insights, advice, stories that are for educational and entertainment purposes only. None of our content should be considered to be personal, medical, or mental health therapy. If you are experiencing a mental health or physical health challenge, please consult the appropriate healthcare specialist. We are here to provide the best possible content in an atmosphere of positive conversation and personal growth.